morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining me from. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to be with me today in this 1-hour webinar hosted by Rommana Software on feature-based project management for Agile and non-Agile projects. My name is Magdy Hanna, and I'm pleased to be with you during this coming hour to share with you my experience and my knowledge on the topic and show you how feature-based project management is really, in my opinion, the common sense approach to project management. Let's get started. All right. Just for the purpose of clarity, in this presentation, I am using the term feature as a generic term to refer to either a requirement or a user story. Instead of saying requirement or user story, I might use the word feature, all right? Because feature is what we deliver to the customer. Now, let me just share with you why I strongly believe that features in software are important and why should we focus on features. I mean, of course, if you've been managing a project before and you've used some tools like Microsoft Projects, there is no focus at all on the features. But we all know that features is what we are delivering to our customers. Features are all that our customers care about. They care about when they're going to get those features, what features are they getting, what is being changed of a feature. So that's exactly why my approach, or I should say the Rommana Software approach to project management, has been accepted by many corporations, and it's fully implemented in Rommana ALM, which is the application lifecycle management tool available from Rommana Software. If you look at this tool, you'll find that it handles project management in a very different way. Again, one more time, when you look at any software product, or you look at any project, in fact, all right, what is important there is a feature, because when you hire a contractor in to do some modifications in your house, what you tell them is the kind of features you want to have in your house. All right, whether you want to have a swimming pool, you want to have a nice backyard, you want to have a fountain, those are all features of the house. And the contractor takes your desires, your requirements, and start building your estimates. So estimates, budget, and time, all based on those features. When we look at a timeline of any project, we have to look into the timeline in terms of features. Which feature is going to be completed and delivered when? There are some risks in any project. And when people manage projects, they have to manage those risks. However, I found out that some risks are specific to a specific feature in the project. That's why it will become important to tie those those risks to the specific features, so that we can see the impact of the risk on the deliverability of the feature, because a risk might actually hinder us from delivering such a feature, right? There might also be some project actions that are specific to features. Keep in mind, there are also risks and actions that are what I call project level actions and the project level risks. They are not specific to a specific feature. All right. We all know also that when one feature changes, when customer changes their mind about a feature, a requirement, or a user story, this might affect or impact another feature, right? Obviously. And because features, requirements, or user stories could possibly change over time, we need to focus on those and to the changes. This is just a list a few things to convince you, if you're not convinced yet, that features are critical in any project. If you look at this diagram, I put feature here in the focus of attention, and everything else is around it. If you think about the development team, They build the databases, they build the design components, they build they might write acceptance criteria, or maybe the test team will write that down here. All right. They do screen layouts, they do prototypes. All these must be linked to specific features, all right, because they do affect the features. We don't just build a database table for nothing. We build a database table to support a given feature. We build the acceptance criteria to make sure that developers have implemented a given feature the way it's supposed to be implemented. When we print prototypes or screen layouts, or when we even purchase some user interface controls, this is for a specific feature. That's all what I'm saying here. Now, from a project management perspective, we have a number of things, as I mentioned, that must be tied to features. I mean, if you want to estimate effort, if you want to estimate how much time it's going to take to build the system, wouldn't it make sense just to look at features by features and do your estimates based on that? If you want to show the progress, don't you want to show this as a feature by feature? I mean, do we want to say our system is about 80% complete? No. We want to say this feature has been completed, this feature has been completed, this feature is still 50% complete, and so on. There are tasks in any project. And the tasks are what? Things like writing the requirement, reviewing the requirement, writing the design, doing the prototype, designing the tests, running the tests, writing the code. These are tasks. And it doesn't make any sense, in my experience, to speak about those tasks for the system as a whole. We want to speak about those tasks and how much time each task is going to take for a feature by feature. Milestones. You can have project level milestones, which means you can say we're going to finish reviewing all requirements by that date. But also milestones must be written and defined in terms of feature by feature. Okay, by what date we're going to be finishing this specific feature. If you look at it from a testing perspective, it's the same thing. Every tester is testing a feature. So they write scenarios, they write acceptance criteria, or they write test cases, write test scripts, they write bug reports, all about features. And there are other things that might or might not be in your projects. There might be some documents. Of course, again, there are some documents that are that apply to the whole project, but there are documents that might serve or explains specific features. Features serve certain functional components or some functionalities within our system. When people review a feature, there are some review notes. These are things that are not possibly in every project. Use cases, not every project use cases. I guess looking at this picture here, it kind of puzzles me how we are managing projects using a tool like Microsoft Project without mention of the features at all. I know we mention features, but they're not really the focus of the attention. I'm going to show you how Rommana ALM actually manage projects with features in the focus of attention. And just a brief, I have 2 slides here quickly to show you what does it mean to manage a project focusing on features. All right. If we're gonna allocate resources and know who's doing what and assign the responsibilities of people, it has to be feature by feature. I know when I say this, some agile people say, "Oh no, we don't assign anything to anybody. The agile team just everyone grabs whatever they want to do." Fine, if that's how you manage your projects. That's not how I manage my projects anyway. I don't just let people pick up whatever they want, okay? Even if they do, at least we know who is working on what. I don't think anyone in any agile project will tell me that I don't care who's working on what. All what I care about is all the features are being worked on. That does not make any sense from a project management perspective. Of course, some people are going to come back to me and say, well, that's why in Agile we don't have project management. Well, good luck then. good luck. Tell me how you're going to succeed. Of course, I mean, maybe we don't have project management with the same classical sense that we had in non-agile projects, but there's some aspect and there's a different way of managing projects in agile projects. We know that. We cannot deny that. We cannot say the project management discipline has to completely disappear when our project is an agile project. All right. As I said earlier, we want to be able to manage our risks throughout the project. And if those risks can impact the delivery of any one of the features, we need then to tie it to that specific feature. Okay. When we look at our timeline, as we're going to see it in a little bit, when we look at the Rommana tool, the Rommana ALM tool, you'll see the timeline with respect to feature by feature. What are we doing with each feature and what is the timeline for that? All right. More. When the test team writes scenarios, they're going to write scenarios or use cases or test cases for a specific feature. We don't just go and write scenarios. We don't. Right? When we want to manage the development activities, where they are designing or coding or reviewing or whatever, or prototyping, it has to be feature by feature. And as I said earlier, features will change. So these are the kind of things we need to be doing if we were to manage our project with features in mind. Okay, now, I have a quiz for you. What I am putting in front of you here is the different tasks within a project. I'm looking back at the classical way of project management, the way everyone manages projects, okay? At the very least, like almost project management 101, for every task within our project, whether the task is requirement reviews, test design, user interface design, whatever, coding, testing, unit testing, these are the typical tasks in any software projects. Just let's look at the first column only. Do we estimate? Do we estimate how many hours each task is going to take from us? Do we even know the actual number of hours each task has taken from us? And if we keep track of these two columns here, then we can easily calculate the percentage of deviation, whether we underestimated or overestimated. I want to ask those of you who are with me today, if you know your project is actually doing this, and it doesn't have to be doing all of them. Let's say just doing the first one or the first and second. Okay, the first one by itself would not make much sense. Okay, but at least if you're going to estimate how many hours a given task is going to take, you need to know how many hours you actually take so that you can see how far off you were from your estimates. Okay, if you think your project is doing this, please go ahead and raise your hand. And I'm going to try to count here. And I'm waiting for your answers. I just want to see the state of practice in our projects. Okay. No one is willing to, I mean, you're working on projects, right? I have over what, 82 people here today. 82 people. Again, I'm going to repeat the question. Does your project keep an estimate of the number of hours that each task within the project is going to take? Or does your project keep track of the actual number of hours for each task? I am puzzled. We're not managing the projects. If we're not doing this, we are not managing the projects. If you look at the simplest people, the contractor you would bring to do some clean up in your backyard. I mean, it can't be any more trivial than that. You bring someone, you bring a worker to go and do some cleanup in your backyard, and you tell him how much you're going to charge me to do the cleanup, you don't think he's going to estimate roughly how many hours it's going to take and possibly how many people it's going to take? And after he finishes the work, he starts estimating, did he do a good estimate or not? Because if he tells you it's going to take 6 hours, 2 people are going to be working for 6 hours, and he brings 2 people, and those 2 people work for 16 hours to do the job, that now he knows that he really underestimated the project. If those people are doing this, why aren't we doing this as project managers? I hate to think that I don't have the right people in my webinar today. I know you might be in the testing side of the project, but you should be aware of if estimates are done in the development side. Okay, some people are going to say, oh, I am in an agile project. Really? So if you are in an agile project, you don't do any estimates. Well, that's not true, because I mean, most agile projects will estimate the story points of any user story. So maybe you don't think story points, well, I agree with you. Story points are not ours. Story points are not ours. I'm really more interested in number of hours, because number of hours, I mean, imagine your customer doesn't care about how many story points you're going to take to implement the features within a sprint. Does not care. You have to have a way of converting those to hours and days so that your customer knows when you're going to deliver a given feature. Okay, fine. No one is doing that. So I will even hesitate to ask the other questions, because then, sorry, let me get rid of that. So I just modified this chart yesterday because it actually, it said effort estimation. It said cost estimation, but I wanted just to show you, I want to show you just the time, okay? Because I have the cost here. I'm sorry. Let's go back here. I have the cost here, but I didn't want to make things difficult for you, okay? So let's focus on just the first 2 columns here. And this is, again, time estimates. Now, this chart is a little bit more sophisticated than the previous chart, because the previous chart was asking you if you are doing estimates for tasks within your project, regardless of what features or requirements or user stories are. But now this saying, okay, for each requirement or user story here, do you keep track of how many hours it's going to take to perform each task? Of course, if your answer to the previous exercise was no, then your answer here cannot be yes. If you're not keeping a track of the time it takes to do tasks for the project as a whole, you're not doing this requirement by requirement or feature by feature. But now, if you do this, this is one step towards feature-based project management. You're really starting to manage the different tasks and the estimates feature by feature. I'm going to ask the question anyway. Anyone is willing to say, you are doing this. Your project is doing this. Again, one more time. I just decided to remove the time, the cost here. But you know, I'm going to keep it in front of you anyway, because this is if you know the actual the cost or the rate per hour for each person involved in this task. You simply multiply. So I just put some numbers here. But if the cost in dollars does not concern you, you can just hide that. So I'm still having a number of hours, estimated number of hours, and actual number of hours, and here is a percentage of deviation. Okay. You can see here for this estimate, for this task here, for the design of this requirement, we overestimated by by 14%. This one here, we underestimated by 14%, and so on. All right. I'm not getting any answer from the audience, so I'm going to assume that no one is doing that either. We need to step up with our project management practice. I'm willing to hear from some of you if you have a different opinion. If this does not make sense to you, please let me know. All right. Well, let's look at the next practice. And all these are what I strongly consider feature-based project management principles if you want to manage your project correctly. And this is all done within Rommana ALM. Next one, work assignment by feature. Now, I guess when I look at this, I said, this is the most common sense of project management. Again, one more time, if you go back to the person who is doing some cleanup in your backyard, or the person who is doing some remodeling in your backyard, adding a fountain, adding a swimming pool, whatever, they have team members. They have people working for them. And they have certain things they're doing. And all what I'm saying here is that they're keeping a track of who is doing what. Who is doing what. This feature here, for example, is the fountain. The fountain that the contractor is going to put in your backyard. He's saying that this person, team member number one, is going to be doing the digging. This person, team number two, is going to be doing the electricity of the fountain. This one here is going to be doing other wiring stuff, whatever. So these are different things that a person, I know in Agile projects, you want to say, who's doing the feature? But again, you know that. No single member of the team is doing everything for a given feature. If you grab a user story, I don't think one person is doing everything about the user story, unless you're running a project of 3 or 4 people team, and everyone is just taking feature. The person is doing the review of the user story, the design, the coding, the testing, everything. That's not a project, in my opinion. I'm not going to even waste your time and ask if your team is doing this or not, because I know what the answer is. Okay, so this is now breaking each feature, breaking down the tasks for each one of the user stories or requirements, and just knowing. And of course, if 2 of these or 3 of those, if I have one person doing the analysis of the user story and the design and the coding, okay, just the same person here. So team member number 1, 2, and 3 are the same person, but maybe team member 7 is a different person who's doing the testing, maybe. All right. So again, work assignment by feature, by task, is an important principle within feature-based project management. All right, let's go to the next one. Do we keep track of, for each feature, each task, when do we start it? When do we end it? Because, again, that's the only way I know the timeline for each feature. By the way, all the things I'm telling you here, you can do them in Excel spreadsheets. You know that. I mean, I'm not forcing you. No one, I don't want anyone to say, well, you're saying this because you want us to buy Rommana ALM. No, I don't want you to. I mean, you could do this in Excel spreadsheet, except it's just going to be a lot of work, a lot of work. A tool like Rommana ALM will make it easy for you because this data is already there. We feed the data, then you pull out some reports. You pull out some reports from the tool that shows this stuff. I'll show it you in a little bit. Okay, but this is what I'm talking about. This user story or this requirement. When are we going to start working on it? On the analysis task. And when are we going to finish analysis? Someone might say, okay, no, we normally combine the analysis and design together. Fine. Okay, then combine these two together, have one column called analysis/design, and say we're going to start it in this date, we're going to end it in this date. If you're going to tell me we normally combine analysis, design, and the coding together, fine. Just to combine the three tasks, and they call it working with the requirement. I don't think you're going to combine testing with it. But again, I know in Agile, the way we practice it, it's going to be a little bit awkward to apply this. Although the whole Agile framework came to say what? We are focusing on what's important. We are focusing on what the customer or the user cares about. And what is that, by the way? What is it that the customer cares about? The features. Okay? So feature-based project management, when I started to think about it over 10 years ago, in my mind, was most applicable to the Agile framework, to Agile projects. Yes, because Agile projects are supposed to focus on what's important, which is the features. And now I'm getting some resistance from some Agile people say, oh, we don't keep track of when we're starting a given task. The developer just to pick up a user story and they start working on it. And when he or she finishes it, they tell us they finished it. That's not project management. Okay, if you're happy with it, that's fine. But I don't know how possibly I can run a project like that. How could I possibly have a bunch of people working on my backyard, doing a number of things, adding a swimming pool, adding a fountain, adding some lighting, doing some posts, and I look at them and say, okay, they are working. I don't know who's working on what. I don't know when they're going to start this and when they're going to finish it, but I know they're going to finish one day. Makes no sense in project management. And it looks like this is what I am hearing back from some Agile people. Again, I don't want to generalize here because I don't think this is how we should run Agile projects. That we don't know who's doing what, and we don't know when we're starting and when we're finishing. I got this resistance before. You can look at my postings on LinkedIn. When I post anything about feature-based project management, that's the kind of response I get. Please, if what I am saying is nonsense to you, let me know. I want to hear. All right, next, look at that. This is a timeline that you should see in any project management tool. Because if you look at the Microsoft project, I consider Microsoft project, it's a task-oriented tool. It's a tool keeping track of tasks and the start and the end date and other things, of course. I don't want to undermine what Microsoft project does. But to me, it makes much more sense to speak about the timeline. So for this feature or this requirement, we're starting prototyping here and we're finishing it here. In the middle of prototyping, we're doing a meeting here. And then we're going to start coding here, we're finishing it here. And while we're doing coding, we're performing some tested design here, and so on. Now, you look at this and say, am I going to keep track of all that? Well, no, the tool will. The tool should. I agree with you. If you were to do this in Excel spreadsheet, it would be a pain. You don't do this in Excel, honestly. If you don't believe in it enough to get a tool to do it for you, then don't do it. All right. So that is a timeline by feature. It's a feature-based timeline. It's telling you what are we going to do with each feature and when we're going to do it. And of course, the details behind this chart, you're going to see it in the tool, because if I put my cursor here in the tool, not in the spreadsheet, this is just a picture. In fact, what you're looking at now is an actual report from Rommana ALM. Again, I hate to keep referring to the tool Rommana ALM because it will sound like I want you to buy the tool. But honestly, no. I want to teach you the whole discipline of feature-based project management. Okay, but unfortunately, I don't have a way of teaching it to you without mentioning the tool, because no other tool does it. And as you can see, I just put a picture of the report and trying to convince you you could do this in Excel spreadsheet, but it's going to be a pain to do it in Excel. So this is a report of the tool, and you'll see it from the tool. Okay, now, if you tell me that you're not doing this, then I don't know if you're doing any meaningful project management or even test management, because this is simply saying, I'm keeping track of each feature, requirement, or user story. I'm keeping track of my tests. I know this matrix or this spreadsheet shows more data than what a typical project would do, but that's my ultimate goal. But at the very least, I'm suggesting that for each requirement or user story, you've got how many tests you have, 87. I'm breaking it down by how many of them were positive, how many of them are negative. Okay, and I'm also breaking it down how many of them I designed as formal test case, and how many of them have been done as an exploratory test. Of course, some of you are going to say, well, do we have test cases when we do exploratory testing? Yes, we do. I mean, I don't know how you're doing your exploratory testing, but my exploratory testing and the way it is done in Rommana ALM, exploratory testing have test cases. And we just designed the 65 test cases, but when we explored, we found out there are another 22 test cases we needed to do. But forget about all that. At minimal, you should have your total number of test cases. How many of them passed? How many of them failed? How many of them yet to be executed? Okay, that's at minimal for each requirement. Forget about positive or negative. Forget about pre-designed or exploratory. Okay. And if you calculate that, if you have these three numbers, the total number of test cases, how many passed, how many failed, how many got executed, you can easily calculate this column here, which is the percentage of readiness. The percentage of readiness simply saying how ready this feature is for release. And the percentage of readiness is calculated simply by dividing the number of passes by the total number. I have 87 total test cases. Out of those, 55 passes. Those are the only ones I can count towards readiness. So if you divide 55 by 87, that gives you the readiness. Okay. Let's look at this 45 test cases here. All right. 40 of them passed. 5% failed. But the readiness is only 88%, 88.89. Why? Because I'm only dividing the 40 by the 45. I still have the remaining 5 test cases failing. And because they're failed, I cannot count them towards readiness because the feature is not ready yet by whatever, 21%. When I take those 5 test cases and I execute them and they pass, then it will complete the 100% readiness. Yet the completeness, which is a representation of how many test cases did we complete. Yes, it's 100% complete. 100% complete does not mean that 100% ready. I'm sure you got that, right? This is 100% complete because all the 45 test cases have been executed. All right. Now, I don't know what you get out of this chart. What you think makes sense for your project? What can you keep track of? Some people call this the traceability matrix. Although in any project you should have many different traceability metrics, but this is tracing requirements to test cases and more explicitly what test cases passed, what failed, what have not been executed yet. And I'm adding to it how many test cases are positive, how many are negative, how many are designed, how many are exploratory. But again, at minimal, I'm going to repeat this for the last time, at minimal, you should keep track of, for each requirement, for each user story, how many test cases, how many passed, how many failed, and how many yet to be executed. All right, I'm going to go faster here. I believe this is my last one. This is the relationship or the traceability between the requirements and design components and the code components. Developer right code components, developers right design components, and all what I'm doing here. And by the way, although I'm putting this chart here in my approach of feature-based project management, I am going to tell you this. I have done this in my projects back in 1985 to 1987. And believe it or not, I tell people and they get surprised. At the time, I used the Lotus 123. If any one of you remembers that, it was the most popular spreadsheet program. Excel did not exist at the time, and even Microsoft did not exist too, if I remember correctly. All right, but I used Lotus 123 to keep track of this. And this is simply saying for each requirement, for each feature I have in the system, which code components were written to do this. And you know why? Because the system I'm talking about was written in assembly code. And I wanted to see if we make a change to this code component, what features are going to be impacted so that we can do a better job in our regression testing. This is a different discussion, by the way. I call it impact analysis for regression testing, or regression testing that's based on impact analysis. Because we all know you make a change to the code, then other features or other code gets affected. And that was my way back in the mid 80s to keep track of these things, of what changes can cause a problem in other features so that we can do good regression testing. I'm going to let this go. I'm not going to ask you to do this, but it is part of feature-based project management. I can see now I have only about 20 minutes left, and I want to make some time to show you Rommana ALM and how it actually supports all the features I was showing you. What you see in front of you is the chart that shows you the different pieces of Rommana ALM. Rommana ALM is a complete web application that does everything you can imagine in application lifecycle management. It's a fully integrated, does requirement management and user stories here. Project management is what I just explained to you, and I will show some of this to you. It has the test design and testing management here. All the document management is performed here. If your project is doing use cases are here. And then all the issues, bug reporting, or whatever you want to call them, are here. Let me move this. Issue management is here. If your requirements or user stories are going to change, the change is handled through the change management. And of course, collaboration is happening throughout the project. So that's why we have what we call a collaboration center here to help team members collaborate. Rommana ALM, as you can see, integrates with Subversion SVN for code version control. And the purpose here is actually the last matrix I showed you. This one here is only possible through the integration with the code version control, because it showed you which for each requirement which code components were written there. Rommana ALM also integrates with UFT, Unified Functional Testing from HP. It used to be called QTP. It integrates with Jira and Bugzilla for bug reporting if you want to maintain your bug reports here, although Rommana does a fantastic job in issue management here. All right, allow me please to go now to show you how Rommana ALM supports this. I'm going to log here quick. I'm going to log as a product owner or project manager. Here is Rommana ALM product or a system, because you can imagine we're using the Rommana ALM software to manage the projects of Rommana ALM. Confusing, huh? All right, so these are the different projects. I'm gonna just open this project here. I'm gonna try to show you as much as I can within those 15 minutes left. This is a dashboard that you see when you open any projects. Anything on this dashboard is clickable. You can click here to see those 15.3% test cases that are failed, that have failed. You can click here to see the open issues. If these issues are critical, you can click in any one of those to see the issue, the details of the issue, and so on. So I'm not gonna bother. I'm not gonna waste your time here. Just as a sample here. Here are the test cases that failed. Okay, just ignore that. Well, I'm just gonna go straight to reports because the reports will show you some of the stuff that I was talking about. If you go down here to project management reports, cost estimation by requirement. I showed you the spreadsheet. I showed you how to do this, and very simple. I'm going to run this report for the whole release because the release has a number of sprints. I'm going to just say display the report and look at what we have here. These are the different requirements in this release, in this project. And here are the task names. And all these task names, by the way, are configurable project by project. As I said earlier, if you don't have testing by developers, don't put that task. If you don't have unit testing, don't put that. If you normally combine scenario development with testing, do that. So the task definitions are within a project. A project manager or an agile coach or whoever can simply say, okay, here are the tasks in my projects. As you can see, I have a task here called development. If you want to break that down to design and then coding, that's fine too. So these are the different tasks you will perform on this requirement. And it shows the estimated number of hours, the actual number of hours, the estimated cost, the actual cost. This is the same matrix I showed you, okay? And the percentage of deviation of the hours and the percentage of deviation of the cost, okay? And that's simply showing how far off you were in your estimates from the actuals, okay? As I said, when I showed you this matrix, if you don't care about the cost is calculated, by the way, by multiplying the hourly rate of everyone involved in the task. Because if I click on the task here, it'll show me who is assigned to do this task. And if I go here, requirement group number 1, that's the specific one I'm looking at. Let's look at that. Here is the requirement group. This is the requirement I'm looking at. It tells me that this person is going to do this task. Their hourly rate is $100 an hour. Estimated the hours is 8 hours, and that's where we got the $800 estimated cost. But again, one more time, don't let this bother you, because if this is not what you're interested in, leave the page. So that's why we got this $800 estimated. This person actually took 9 hours. That's why he's got $900 actual. If you're not interested in estimating the cost, just ignore those, okay? All right, so this is the cost estimation by feature, by requirement, or by user story. By the way, it shows here by requirement, but if your project is an agile project, it would say cost estimation by user story, and you would not see the word requirement here. The menu is changed to say user stories. That's why. So the user interface is configurable or adjustable or customizable, if you will, to depending on whether your project is agile or non-agile. Now, at the bottom here, we have what we call estimates for project level tasks. That's why I don't have any requirements here. These are the tasks that are project level, like creating the build, okay? System testing. This is not for a specific feature, and we're still estimating that. Let's look at the timeline. Project timeline, okay? I will run it for the whole release again. And remember when I told you I'm showing you actually a picture of the report from Rommana ALM? This report has a lot of data. That's why it took a little bit, a second or two to form, because it pulls a lot of data from the database. And this is exactly the image, the picture I was showing you. But this is live picture now, because as you can see, if I put my cursor here for this task, there are 3 people participating, the estimated number of hours of each one, the actual number of hours of each one. If I click on the task, it'll show me much more details than that. Okay, so this is just putting the cursor on the task. All right. Of course, if I put the cursor on a requirement here, it shows me simple data about the requirement. But guess what? If I want to actually look at the requirement, I can click on it and it says, do you want to show the requirement details, or you want to associate more tasks with this requirement? Let me show the requirement details. So now it takes me to the requirement screen where I can see everything about the requirement. The description, the ad hoc tests that are written for this requirement, the scenarios, and so on. So this is the requirement screen, and it tells me this requirement has been baselined or implemented, so you cannot make any changes here. That's the way Rommana ALM works. Okay, back to my report here. Of course, you can modify this report because this is an interactive report. Okay, you can simply say, no, Jane is not going to be doing this anymore, but rather I'm going to assign someone else, and Jane is going to be doing something else. Whatever. You can click on the task here, test the design here. Do you want to edit the name of and the duration of the task, or you want to do other properties? Let me do this. It tells you this is a task supposed to start to June 18, June 19. You cannot change anything here. Okay, so that's how you change the report or the data behind the report. When you make the change here, when you update the changes, the database gets updated, the report gets updated immediately. Okay, I don't want to do this now. And the project level tasks are again at the bottom, right here. I have creating the build here. I have system testing here, and the same thing. So I can click here. I say, okay, system testing is not going to start here. I can change the duration and update, and this will update by itself. The report will update live. Let me go further, show you a few more reports, and we're going to be done. Oh, you remember the cost estimation by requirement? I also have cost estimation by task, if that's what you're interested in. That shows you for each task, not for each requirement. For development, this requirement is going to take that much time. This requirement is going to take that much time. The total for the development is going to be 50 hours split by requirements here. So that shows you the estimates by feature, by task, and also break it down by requirement. Okay. It's the same, by the way, it's the same data that was in the previous report, but organized differently. Testing by developers, I guess 20 hours total. And the only requirement that's taking those 20 hours is this requirement. Obviously, this requirement here was not tested by developers, or we're not planning for it. I mean, of course, I can click on this requirement. I can get to the task. Actually, I can click on the task here, and I can go to that requirement and can say, okay, for this requirement, we're estimating that many number of hours. Okay. So that is the cost estimation by task. All right, I think that's enough. I'm gonna let you play with Rommana ALM if you'd like to. Don't forget that you could go ahead and go to the Rommana ALM website and request a free trial for 60 days for up to 3 members of your team. Go ahead here to packages and the pricing, and it shows you the different packages. This is at the bottom here. This is the complete Rommana ALM. You can just ask to try it for free, and it gives you the whole thing for 60 days, up to 3 members of your team. If you're interested only in requirement management or requirement management, test management, you could do this. but that's how you can request a free trial of Rommana ALM. I want to thank you so much for being with me today in this webinar. I hope to see you in future webinars. I believe in 2 weeks from now, I'm giving a webinar on scenario-based development and testing. This also will be recorded and be made available on the website. Again, thank you so much. I hope you will have a chance to try Rommana ALM yourself.